A family of 3 is on their way to move into their new home. Inside the car are the sisters, Vera and Beth. Beth reads her story while their mother, Pauline, listens as she drives. Pauline commends Beth's new story, saying it's the best and scariest one she's written. Vera is weirded out by her younger sister's passion for writing scary stories. Suddenly, they hear sirens and a candy truck drives up to them. A person's silhouette waves at them and Pauline and Beth wave back. Meanwhile, Vera flips them off. At a store, Beth purchases a sandwich for dinner. Before she leaves, the attendant compliments their vintage car. Beth shares that they're moving into town because her Aunt Clarice died and left them a house. Shortly after, Beth browses through some horror books. She then sees the candy truck from before passing by. Beth reads a newspaper article, and Vera enters the shop. Beth tells Vera news about murderers who hunts down families but oddly spares the daughters. Pauline interrupts and signals for them to leave. The family arrives at Aunt Clarice's house and the home is filled with creepy dolls. While judging her late aunt's taste in decoration, Beth is filled with curiosity. They open up a cabinet where a doll pops out and scares Vera. In her room, Beth is arranging her horror books when she sees that her hand is bloody. An emotional Beth shouts for her mother. Pauline realizes that Beth has gotten her first period and assures her that she'll be fine. Vera remains cold and insensitive about the delicate situation. Later that night, Pauline accompanies Vera, who seems to be worried about her sister. Vera doesn't understand why Beth writes such terrifying stories when she's easily shaken. She believes that Beth needs to be discouraged from obsessing over morbid fantasies. Pauline disregards what Vera says, thinking she's just acting out. As soon as Pauline returns inside, Vera curses and flips her off. In the distance, a vehicle's headlights point towards Vera. Vera is unaware of it and returns inside. Seen through the open door is the candy truck. Vera joins the rest of the family and orders Beth to go to her room. They then hear a creaking sound but ignore it. Pauline goes downstairs to put away some boxes. Her phone rings, and while she answers the call, a man rams her into a wall. He strikes and knocks Pauline out. The man sniffs the dolls, and the sisters see him. He chases after them, catches them, and drags them by the hair. They scream as they get pulled down into the basement. The man holds up Beth to smell her bloody crotch. He is disgusted and lets her go. With Vera, he likes the smell, so he pins her to the wall. Beth cries as her sister gets dragged into another room. She tries escaping, but a woman attacks her. The woman then orders Beth to stay put by the basement. Suddenly, Pauline charges at the woman. They wrestle, and Beth is too frightened to help. The woman stabs Pauline with a broken glass bottle, and after some struggling, the noise stops. Beth sees the woman fall to the floor and an injured Pauline crawling to her. She tells Beth to go and run away. Pauline enters the basement to save Vera. Beth follows closely and watches as her mother wrestles the man. Pauline stabs the man until he stops moving. Vera shouts to warn her mother about the woman coming at her. With the same blade, Pauline turns to stab the woman in the neck. 16 years later, in Chicago, an older Beth wakes up from her nightmare and rolls off the bed. Her husband rushes to comfort her. Later that day, Beth is seen writing on her typewriter. She has accomplished her childhood dream of becoming an author. Her husband interrupts Beth to inform her about the recent success of her new book. But Beth doesn't seem interested in fame and money. During an interview, a host promotes Beth's latest book titled Incident in a Ghostland. Beth wrote the book as a tribute to her family. The host questions Beth on the truthfulness of the scenes in the book. The host is attacking Beth's past traumas, but Beth just laughs it off. In front of the television, Beth and her family watch the interview. The phone rings and Beth answers it. It's Vera, and she sounds agitated and fearful. Vera asks Beth to come back, and the call gets cut off. The following day, Beth packs up her bags to visit her family. They're still living in Aunt Clarice's house. Beth arrives, and Pauline welcomes her. Beth asks how Vera is doing, and Pauline assures Beth that nothing is wrong. Night arrives, and Beth goes downstairs, wearing her pajamas. Pauline prepares dinner and shares her plan of renovating the house. She has saved up enough money from selling their antique toys. Beth offers to give her more money, but Pauline doesn't want to trouble her. Beth begins to tear up because she feels guilty about leaving her mother with Vera. But Pauline understands that Beth had to live her life. She comforts her daughter and they make a toast, but then screams from the basement interrupt them. In the basement, they search for Vera. The closet opens and Vera comes out, afraid and in distress. They carry Vera into her room. Seeing her sister like this makes Beth emotional. Later that night, Pauline watches the television and invites Beth to watch with her. They talk about Vera and how the night of their attempted murder continuously plays in her head. There seems to be no way to set Vera free from her trauma. They just have to live with it and understand her. In the middle of the night, Beth awakens from another nightmare. She turns off her alarm, and in the mirror she sees the phrase, "Help me." Beth enters the basement and sees Vera hugging her doll. Vera shows Beth her bloody hands. She explains that a voice in her head is punishing her, and she asks Beth to make the voices stop. As they hug, Vera hears footsteps, thinking they're the voices. She runs to hide, and honking is heard from outside. Outside, Beth sees a vehicle passing by, and in the backyard she sees a dog. They stare at each other, but Pauline appears to shoo the dog away. Back inside, Pauline and Beth dance to soft jazz music. Pauline has had too much to drink, and she reminisces about how young and innocent Beth was. Pauline looks at the mirror and sighs at the sight of her wrinkled face. They talk about Beth's latest book, and Pauline says it's the best Beth has ever written. As the night progresses, Pauline is already fast asleep, and Beth is still awake. She sees the same message in the mirror, and she hears faint whimpering. Beth sees Vera handcuffed to a bed. Beth leaves the room to wake her mother up. Immediately, the door closes. Beth returns and bangs on the door. Vera screams in pain, but suddenly she stops. Beth sees a keyhole and looks through it. A figure appears and scares her. Upon seeing this, Beth runs to her mother to ask for the room's key. Pauline wakes up and tells Beth that the room has no key. Beth returns upstairs, and Vera comes out of the room. Vera seems to be struggling and fighting with no one but herself. She breaks her fingers and goes downstairs. Beth sees Vera lying on the floor. Pauline approaches and reveals that she knows why Vera is acting out. Before Pauline leaves to get help, she advises Beth not to listen to Vera. When Beth returns inside, she sees Vera leaving the room. The door behind Beth closes. Beth tries to communicate with Vera by the basement door. Then, a voice tells Beth that it's her turn to be broken, just like her sister. Along the corridor, she envisions the man from before dragging Vera. A few hours later, Beth waits for her mother to come home. She falls asleep, but the dog's barking wakes her up. Beth hears the front door open, thinking it's her mother. Before she can find out, a strange figure attacks her from behind. She hobbles to the mirror to see the injury she sustained. Beth shouts for her mother, who is nowhere to be seen. She's hysterical, with tears running down her bruised face. Beth makes her way to the basement to look for Vera. She sees Vera and asks what she did to her. Vera believes it's the voices that attacked Beth. Beth calls her a psycho, but Vera is too traumatized to realize it. Vera punches Beth and shouts for her to stop running away from reality. Inside Beth's head, she relives the night of the murder. Vera talks her into believing that her mother died that night. Beth cries and shouts, accepting more and more that their mother is dead. Beth succumbs to Vera's convincing statements, and she returns to reality. They're both young again. Beth sees pictures of a man and a child that she imagined was her family. In reality, they're still held captive in the basement. On a mirror is the same message from before. Later that night, Vera eats happily because her sister is back. However, Beth is speechless and refuses to eat. She expresses her hate toward Vera because she took away her dream. Morning arrives, and Vera wakes Beth up and makes her hide in a closet. Vera warns Beth not to move and cry if she gets caught. Vera kisses her and closes the cabinet. The basement door opens in footsteps near Beth. The woman grabs Beth, and she struggles, which forces the woman to knock her out. Later that day, Beth is on makeup just like the dolls in the room. The woman gives Beth a makeover to prepare her for the man. They make their way into a room filled with more dolls. Beth sits amongst them, and the woman leaves. Before the man enters the room, Beth is taken to the bathroom. Beth grabs a sharp object from one of the dolls and stores it in her hair. The man has a limp, and he moans as he sees all the dolls prepared for him. He grabs a doll and plays with it. His hand creeps into the doll's crotch, causing it to make a noise. This angers the man, so he breaks the doll's fingers and burns its hand. He then looks to get another. He chooses Beth and holds her up by her foot. The man smells Beth's sweat and buries his face into her neck. As his hands slide to her bottom, Beth screams. The man slaps her and turns on his blowtorch, but a doll falling catches his attention. While he's distracted, Beth reaches for the sharp object, holds it tightly, and stabs the man. He's disoriented and falls to a pile of dolls. Their voice boxes turn on, and they insult the man. Feeling outraged, he rips them apart. After a while, he calms down and stops, allowing Beth to sneak past him. She runs out of the room and finds herself in front of a door. She tries to open it, but the woman is on the other side. The man catches Beth and drags her back into his room. He forces himself onto her. But then, Beth gets a hold of her typewriter and hits the man with it. Beth stands up and hits him again, knocking him out. Beth is by the door, but she hesitates to open it. As she listens, a hammer comes crashing through from the other side. Little by little, the woman breaks down the door. Meanwhile, Beth throws the typewriter out the window. The woman finally gets through and looks out the window. Beth is nowhere to be seen, and the woman leaves to look for her. Inside the cabinet is Beth, and she sees that the man is awake. The doll beside her starts laughing, and she covers up its mouth. It stops, and after some time, Beth comes out of the cabinet and runs downstairs. She sees the woman searching for her outside. Beth opens the basement door and calls out to Vera. They attempt to make a run for it, but before they reach the front door, the woman returns. She is inches away from seeing them, but the man upstairs calls for her. As soon as she leaves, the sisters run out of the house and escape into the woods. Dawn arrives, and the sisters see a police car on the road. The police see the sisters and approach them. Vera warns them not to touch her, and the female cop assures her that they won't hurt them. The male cop returns to the car to report the situation. As he runs back, he suddenly gets shot. The bullets come from the woman, who then shoots the female cop. Inside the candy truck, Vera furiously bangs on a window while Beth seems to have lost all hope. Vera shouts at Beth to come back, but Beth's vision starts to blur. They arrive at the house, and Vera can't do anything but shout and cry. The woman drags her, and Beth visualizes her fantasy once more. During a party, Beth sees her mother and they give each other compliments. They separate and Beth sits alone. Amongst the crowd is her family and Beth waves at them. A man sits beside her. It's H.P. Lovecraft, Beth's idol and favorite author. He considers her newest novel a masterpiece and Beth is speechless. She thanks him and Lovecraft goes on his way. Suddenly, Beth sees Vera. She runs upstairs and sees Vera banging on a door. Pollen tries to convince her to stay, but Beth wants to return. For her sister, she will endure their horrifying reality. Beth runs toward the door and returns to reality. Back in reality, Beth gets dragged by the man. He chokes Beth, causing her mouth to foam up. The doll in the cabinet starts to laugh, and this distracts the man. While he's busy strangling the doll, Beth runs to save Vera. She hammers the woman's head into the floor and bites her fingers. Beth then bites off a piece of skin but gets thrown off. With the doll, the man rushes at the sisters but gets shot from behind. A police officer aims at the woman. She stands up, but her suspicious movements get her shot as well. The sisters comfort one another. They leave the house on stretchers, but they won't ever leave the horrors they experienced. Beth looks at her sister and mouths that she loves her. Vera enters an ambulance, and Beth sees the serial killers in body bags. By the window, Beth sees her mother pointing to a typewriter. Inside the ambulance, the paramedic tries to lighten the mood with some small talk. He asks Beth what her interests are, and Beth replies that she likes to write stories. The end. Hope you like this recap. Subscribe for more. Bye.